Picture American TV history without MASH. Nearly impossible, isn't it? The series didn't merely achieve popularity, it fundamentally transformed the sitcom genre. Launching in 1972 while the Vietnam War wound down, MASH depicted the Korean conflict while masterfully combining comedy with genuine emotion. The ensemble cast brought to life eccentric personalities who examined war's irrationality and humanity's endurance. Audiences embraced it immediately. Yet behind the camera, the production underwent continuous transformation. As the show delved deeper into social issues and intricate character development, friction occasionally emerged. Multiple cherished cast members ultimately decided to depart. Did they leave for personal motivations, career ambitions, or artistic disagreements? The actual reasons might astonish you. Let's examine what truly transpired. Number one, a combat narrative infused with emotion. This story contains numerous layers, but first let's travel backward chronologically to understand how this iconic show originated. Similar to many exceptional television programs, MASH's journey started not on screen, but between book covers. In 1968, Dr. Richard Hooke, the pseudonym of Korean War medical officer H. Richard Hornberger, released MASH chronicling three military physicians. This novel fictionalized his experiences serving at a mobile army surgical hospital throughout the Korean conflict. Through its combination of dark humor with genuine humanity and harsh truths, the publication quickly topped bestseller lists, attracting Hollywood's interest. 2 years following publication, filmmaker Robert Altman transformed the novel into a cinematic MASH, creating a satirical dark comedy that proved both provocative and thought-provoking. Donald Sutherland portrayed Hawkeye Pierce while Elliot Gould embodied Trapper John, resonating powerfully with viewers as the Vietnam War dominated American collective consciousness. The movie achieved both critical acclaim and box office success, securing the Palme d'Or at Cannes, plus an Academy Award for Best Screenplay. The genuine cultural phenomenon arrived 2 years afterward when CBS transformed the concept into a weekly television series. Created by Larry Gelbart and Gene Reynolds, the TV adaptation of MASH premiered September 17, 1972. It maintained the military backdrop and unconventional humor while introducing a more serialized, character-focused approach, enabling richer emotional narratives. Alan Alda assumed the Hawkeye Pierce role and swiftly became the show's central figure. Though the inaugural season encountered rating challenges severe enough to nearly face cancellation, CBS gambled by relocating it to Saturday evenings. Following this adjustment, viewership skyrocketed, as did the program's cultural significance. The show broke conventions, pioneering in Hollywood by experimenting with structure, incorporating authentic war footage, and becoming among the first American comedies regularly featuring helicopter sounds rather than laugh tracks. Alan Alda, portraying Hawkeye, eventually became a director-writer and creative influence, advocating for increased realism and emotional depth. However, as MASH evolved, so did its characters. Not every actor supported the new trajectory. Some perceived their parts diminishing or turning into caricatures. Others faced personal difficulties or desired to pursue different creative opportunities. Overall, throughout its 11-season duration, MASH experienced multiple cast transitions, yet remained committed to a unified purpose, depicting war's toll through compassion, humor, and unbreakable human connections. With this context established, let's explore the first significant departure. An actor whose exit proved so unanticipated that writers decided to kill his character in a moment that stunned the entire nation. Number 2, McLean Stevenson. Ask dedicated MASH viewers which moment affected them most profoundly, and they'll likely reference the concluding scene from Season 3's finale, Abyssinia Henry. Just a single line delivered softly by radar, yet it altered everything. Lieutenant Colonel Henry Blake's aircraft was shot down over the Sea of Japan. No one survived. That instant proved groundbreaking, not simply because it shocked viewers, but because it represented the first major departure of a central MASH cast member, McLean Stevenson. How did this situation develop? McLean had been integral to MASH from its inception. As the genial, frequently bewildered commanding officer of the 4077th, his character, Colonel Henry Blake, perfectly contrasted the chaos of warfare. Where Hawkeye and Trapper delivered rebellion and cleverness, Henry Blake provided humanity, sometimes flustered, sometimes oblivious, yet always kind-hearted. During early seasons, McLean's portrayal garnered widespread acclaim and a Golden Globe. He delivered humor, relatability, and deep audience affection. Behind the scenes, however, circumstances weren't entirely harmonious. Based on interviews and cast-writer memoirs, McClane experienced mounting frustration regarding his role. While the show commenced as a balanced ensemble comedy, it rapidly began focusing on Alan Alda's Hawkeye Pierce. As Alda became increasingly involved in writing and directing, his character acquired greater emotional and narrative significance. McClane, meanwhile, felt marginalized. So marginalized that he disclosed to People magazine in 1975, "I want to be number one. I want to be the guy carrying the show." Though this might sound egotistical, it wasn't truly about McClane's ego. McClane harbored ambitious dreams of stardom. He possessed substantial aspirations. But Hollywood typically allows actors to easily become typecast. For McClane, he was falling into a pattern he desperately wanted to avoid. He recognized television's power and believed he possessed the charisma and ability to lead his own program. He sought opportunities where he wouldn't perpetually be secondary or tertiary. He wanted primacy. Therefore, at season 3's conclusion, McClane informed producers he wouldn't return. Here's where matters took an unexpected turn. Traditionally, when actors departed sitcoms, their characters received gentle write-offs, transfers, reassignments, perhaps marriage. But MASH wasn't traditional. Its creators, Larry and Gene, recognized an opportunity for boldness. They wanted to remind audiences that MASH fundamentally remained a war narrative. In war, not everyone returns home. This presented the perfect opportunity. What followed was the legendary Abyssinia Henry episode. Throughout the episode, Henry Blake receives discharge orders and prepares for homecoming. Celebration occurs, tears embraces, joyful farewells. For 25 minutes, it resembles a happy conclusion. Then arrives the final scene like a devastating storm. Radar enters the operating room, hat in hand, expression grave. Doctors are mid-surgery when he delivers the news. Lieutenant Colonel Henry Blake's aircraft was shot down over the Sea of Japan. No survivors. An intense silence echoed throughout America. No dramatic score, no laugh track or helicopter sounds, just stunned expressions and surgical equipment beeping. That scene transformed television history. It marked the first time a beloved sitcom character died permanently and unexpectedly. The cast's raw reactions were partially genuine, as only select individuals knew the ending beforehand. Alda later revealed that Gary Berghoff portraying Radar was the sole actor informed in advance for preparation. The remaining cast reacted authentically in that final take. Upon airing, the episode generated immediate and intense responses. CBS received thousands of letters, many praising the show's honesty, others angry about such a beloved character's sudden removal. Some accused producers of excessive extremity, but Larry defended the decision, stating, "We wanted to say that not everybody gets to go home," and they certainly conveyed that message. What became of McClane after departing things weren't as idyllic as he likely envisioned. Initially, circumstances seemed promising. He secured a lucrative NBC deal, eager to establish independence. He starred in the McClane-Stevenson Show, a family sitcom built around his affable charm. He appeared to be forging his own path and establishing industry recognition, but it proved short-lived. His show was canceled after one season. In a second attempt, Hello Larry fared even worse. Despite substantial expectations and heavy promotion, the show received critical condemnation and became a recurring joke in subsequent years. Retrospectively, McClane came to regret leaving MASH. In a 1983 Los Angeles Times interview, he admitted, "I took myself out of the game. It wasn't merely that his new shows failed. It was the realization that MASH represented a once-in-a-lifetime experience. The cast, the writing, the impact, it was lightning captured in a bottle." Some co-stars like Alda and Loretta Sweet expressed sadness about his departure while understanding his desire to branch out. Others quietly questioned whether he departed too hastily from something extraordinary. Despite his regrets, McClane continued working in television and made occasional guest appearances, but never discovered the same success level or emotional audience connection as playing Henry Blake. When he passed away in 1996 at age 68, tributes flooded in from fans and colleagues, with Alda remembering him as a wonderful actor and good man, and Gary calling him a light-hearted spirit bringing joy to everyone around him. Whatever one's opinion of McClane, his departure gave the show its soul. That's the irony. While he left seeking his big break, the role he abandoned became his career's most enduring. But if McClane's departure seemed nerve-wracking, Wayne Rogers' MASH exit was entirely different. quiet, complicated, and full of behind-the-scenes drama. Number 3. Wayne Rogers. While McClane received a farewell episode, tearful goodbye, and a moment becoming TV history, Wayne Rogers simply vanished. We saw him one episode, and the next he was gone. No goodbye, no explanation, certainly no closure. Why things aren't always as pleasant on set as they appear on camera. To understand what transpired, we must return to the beginning. Wayne Rogers portrayed Trapper John McIntyre, half of the original comedic partnership defining MASH's early seasons. He and Alda's Hawkeye Pierce were the 4077's lifeblood. The duo's chemistry was magnetic, and audiences adored it, especially their rapid-fire banter, mischief, and unwavering friendship. It resembled watching a wartime odd couple, albeit with surgical humor. Behind the laughter, tension was secretly developing. Wayne had joined MASH believing it would be a genuine ensemble show with equal screen time for core cast members. But as the series progressed, much spotlight began shifting toward Alda's character. It soon became evident that Hawkeye became more than just co-lead. He was now the show's moral center, the emotional foundation. After Alda, a talented writer and director, started contributing substantially to the show's creative direction, things genuinely started appearing different. Initially, Wayne didn't mind Alda's success. Conversely, the two were reportedly friendly offset, but naturally he soon felt marginalized. Alda's character seemed the only one experiencing growth. Others appeared stuck in their original constraints. Suddenly, Trapper John had transformed from leading man to supporting character. As Wayne later explained in interviews, it wasn't about ego, it was about storytelling integrity. He once stated, Trapper didn't have much to do. He was one of two buddies, and then he became the guy who nodded at everything Alan said. Unlike McClane, who made a public exit and received a send-off, Wayne chose a different path. Quietly and without commotion, he decided not to renew his contract after season 3. Producers didn't even know he was officially gone until shortly before season 4 filming began. Here's where things get even more unusual. Wayne's show contract was never formally signed, meaning he had been working on a handshake agreement all along. This meant when producers threatened to sue for breach of contract, they had no legal foundation. He hadn't broken anything. He had simply walked away from a show he no longer believed was giving his character growth space. His departure was abrupt, leaving writers scrambling. Consequently, they had to rework season 4's opening, explaining in the first episode that Trapper John had been discharged while Hawkeye was on leave. The audience reaction was brutal. First Henry, now Trapper. Was this real? Worse still, there was no farewell scene, no hospital party, and most importantly, no heartfelt goodbye. With producers scrambling for damage control, Mike Farrell arrived as BJ Honeycutt in Wayne's place, a character written to be more grounded, emotionally complex, and perhaps less rebellious than Trapper. With this change, the show's dynamics shifted immediately. Gone was the buddy comedy edge, replaced by a softer, more introspective version. But here's the irony. MASH actually grew deeper, arguably better in Trapper's absence. Though many still argue preferring earlier seasons, we'd say the opposite. Wayne, meanwhile, didn't disappear from the spotlight. After MASH, he appeared in TV shows and films, but eventually took an entirely different path, becoming a successful financial investor and commentator. Wayne was intelligent, extremely intelligent. He had studied history at Princeton and later built a Wall Street career. By the 1990s, he was a regular Fox News cash-in panelist discussing economics and policy. He made millions, not from acting, but from shrewd investing. Still, he never completely abandoned Hollywood. He did several TV movies, took on recurring roles, and even joked about his MASH time in later interviews. Despite his departure's suddenness, there didn't seem to be lasting animosity between him and the cast. In fact, Alda once said, "Wayne is one of the smartest people I've ever worked with. I missed him a lot when he left." That friendship remained intact. When Wayne passed away in 2015 at age 82, Alda tweeted, "He was smart, funny, curious, and dedicated. We made a pact to give each other a hard time for the rest of our lives, and I'm sorry we won't have the chance." Though Wayne left MASH at its early popularity peak without fanfare or applause, he's still remembered affectionately by fans who loved Trapper's playful grin and easygoing charm. We've discussed how these actors left to pursue other paths, but what about those who left because the series was so emotionally taxing? Number 4, Gary Berghoff. It's ironic considering he was the team's heart, But Gary Berghoff didn't leave MASH with fanfare or celebration. He left quietly, painfully, and for reasons far deeper than most people ever realized. To fans, Gary was Radar O'Reilly, the wide-eyed company clerk with uncanny intuition, a teddy bear under one arm and war under the other. Radar could hear helicopters before anyone else. He possessed a sweet, almost childlike innocence that softened the battlefield's harshness. While Hawkeye and Trapper broke rules and Henry, Blake fumbled through leadership. Radar was the glue soul, and some might even say the 4077th's emotional heartbeat. But behind that soft voice and nervous smile was an actor slowly unraveling under everything's weight. Gary was the only actor reprising his role from the original 1970 MASH film, and in doing so he brought vulnerability to Radar that didn't exist in the film. The movie version of Radar was more mischievous, even slightly sleazy. But on TV, Gary shaped Radar into something unforgettable, a symbol of lost innocence during wartime. In fact, his performance was so iconic that he was often considered irreplaceable. Yet by season 7, cracks began showing. Gary was struggling, personally and professionally. MASH's grueling production schedule, combined with his own perfectionism, began wearing him down. He had long battles with anxiety and depression, something that rarely made headlines at the time but deeply affected his ability to cope with filming demands. Then there was the pain of being away from his family. By the late 1970s, Gary was married with a young daughter. But the long hours on set meant he was constantly away from home, and he later admitted that missing his daughter's early years felt like a mistake I never stopped regretting. In a 2018 interview, co-star Mike Farrell recalled, Gary had emotional problems. He always felt that he wasn't getting the attention or appreciation he deserved. But I think he underestimated how much we all respected him. There were also contractual disputes stemming from Gary wanting better pay, more flexibility, and less screen time so he could manage his personal life. The producers, aware of how central Radar was to the show, tried accommodating him as best they could. At one point, Gary was even granted more time off and fewer appearances per season. But it wasn't enough for him. Emotionally, he was finished. So in season 8, he made the difficult decision to leave MASH for good. But this time, unlike Wayne, the show didn't let him slip away quietly. Radar got a 2-part farewell episode titled Goodbye, Radar, one of the series' most heart-wrenching storylines. In it, Radar returns from leave to discover the 4077th falling apart in his absence. At first, he tries fixing everything just like always, but ultimately he realizes it's time to move on. His mother needs him back home. His community farm is in trouble, and perhaps Radar has finally matured. The episode's final scene is nearly silent. Just Radar walking away silhouetted against the Korean sky, his teddy bear left behind on Hawkeye's bunk. That moment was as emotional as it was touching. It expressed everything the show couldn't verbalize. And the audience felt that loss because watching him leave felt like saying goodbye to our own innocence. After MASH, Gary took a long acting break. He made a few appearances, including a short-lived spin-off called Walter, where Radar becomes a rookie cop. But it didn't quite take off. Eventually, he chose to step away from Hollywood altogether, instead devoting himself to painting, wildlife conservation, and inventing. Yes, you heard correctly, inventing. He held several patents, including one for a fishing tackle system. His love for nature soon became a refuge and a way to heal from fame's pressures and MASH's emotional toll. Gary would later explain that he left for 2 reasons. My family and burnout. I wanted to pick up the pieces of my life. And who could blame him? Today, Gary lives a quiet life. He doesn't do many interviews. He doesn't chase the spotlight. But every now and then, fans will spot him at a convention or read a rare quote, and they remember the kid with the soft heart and the big ears who could hear choppers before anyone else. Now let's move on to the man who played one of TV's most hilarious villains. Number 5, Larry Linville. It's hard to imagine early MASH without Frank Burns, the rigid, petty, and hopelessly self-important character played to perfection by Larry Linville. Major Burns was the character audiences loved to hate. His sycophantic obsession with rules, his secret affair with Major Houlihan, and his deep inferiority complex made him the perfect comic foil to Hawkeye and Trapper. But as the show matured, Frank's one-dimensional villainy began to stand out, and not positively. While other characters deepened, Frank remained stuck in a loop. His insecurities never evolved, and his prejudices were never challenged. And Larry, an actor with far more range than he was allowed to show, started to feel the strain. By the end of season 5, Larry made a bold decision. He wouldn't renew his contract. In his words, he had taken the character as far as he could. He wasn't fired and definitely wasn't pushed. He simply walked away, recognizing that MASH was growing beyond Frank's limited function, and the ripple effect was enormous. With Frank gone, the show was free to explore more layered moral conflicts. There was no longer a need for a cartoon villain. The comedy could come from irony and humanity rather than slapstick and cruelty. In many ways, Larry's exit marked a creative crossroads for MASH, one that would elevate it from good to legendary. But that doesn't mean fans didn't feel the loss. For 5 seasons, Frank was the punchline and the pressure. His departure forced the series to rethink its rhythm. And while his exit wasn't mourned in the show's storyline, he was written out off-screen as having received a cushy promotion it would deeply felt in the show's DNA. Larry went on to do guest roles in TV and film, but never again found a part as visible or as unforgettable as Major Frank Burns. Not only was Larry's character written out of the show, another character who would also later leave the show was written in to kind of take his place. David Ogden Stiers. If Frank Burns was the cartoon villain, Charles Emerson Winchester III was the slow burn. Brought in to replace Frank in season 6, Winchester couldn't have been more different. Cultured, brilliant, arrogant, and deeply private, he was more than just an antagonist. He was a challenge. To Hawkeye, to BJ, to the very tone of the show itself. And David Ogden Stiers played him with exquisite restraint. At first, Winchester came off as pompous and insufferable, but over time cracks began to show. He wasn't heartless, just guarded, and he definitely wasn't cruel, maybe just a little proud. Beneath the layers of opera and wine talk was a man reckoning with the brutal reality of war, one patient at a time. Unlike Larry or the others, David didn't exit mid-series. He stayed until the final episode, leaving not in protest, but in poetic closure. His final scene teaching Chinese POWs to play Mozart is one of the most hauntingly beautiful moments in television history. And that was the power of Winchester. He wasn't there to be liked. He was there to remind us that war breaks everyone, even those who think they're too refined to be touched by it. When given the chance to join the spin-off after MASH, David passed on it, explaining that his character's arc was complete. In his words, Winchester had said what he needed to say. Following his successful time on the show, he went on to voice Disney characters, and in 2009 he came out with his sexuality during an interview with the website Gossip Boy, saying, "I am gay, very proud to be so." According to him, he hadn't come out earlier in his career because he feared it might hurt his chances in the industry, particularly when he was doing voice work for Disney and still appearing in television and film. At the time, there was real concern that coming out could cost actors roles or lead to typecasting. Despite being private about his personal life for most of his career, he was deeply respected in the industry, both for his dignity and his extraordinary range. He passed away in 2018 at age 75 from bladder cancer. Still, his legacy remains not only in his performances, but also in the quiet courage it took to live his truth on his own terms. But we can't wrap this video up without some honorary mentions. Although the women in this show typically played background and supporting characters, their roles were pivotal to the development of the show's tone, and one such woman was Major Margaret "Hot Lips" Houlihan. Number 6, the women of MASH. In a war zone filled with men cracking jokes to keep the darkness at bay, the women of MASH had a tougher job being seen, and no woman faced a steeper climb or a more remarkable transformation than Major Margaret "Hot Lips" Houlihan, played by Loretta Swit. When MASH began, Margaret was written as the punchline. Her nickname said it all. Hot Lips, a reference to a gag in the original film. She was strict by the book and often the object of ridicule. But Loretta refused to let Margaret stay in that box. With every season, she infused the character with intelligence, strength, and vulnerability. By the end of the series, Margaret wasn't just respected. She was fully realized, complex, and quietly revolutionary. Loretta once said in an interview, "I wanted her to be a woman of substance." And she was. Margaret became a decorated officer, a skilled head nurse, and one of the few characters who openly questioned the war's cruelty while still doing her job with unshakable precision. Interestingly, while many male actors left MASH, Loretta stayed for all 11 seasons. She was one of only 4 actors to appear in both the pilot and the finale. While recurring female characters like Lieutenant Ginger Bayless or Nurse Cutler came and went, Margaret stayed and evolved. In a show where war stripped everyone down to their barest selves, Margaret stood tall, and thanks to Loretta's persistence, the only woman in the opening credits made sure the boys didn't carry the show alone. What actors did we miss? Tell us in the comments below. Thanks for watching. To enjoy more exciting videos, click play on the video on your screen. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you get notified when a new video drops.